Now, Israel has also conducted military operations on other fronts, including across the border with its neighbour Syria, following the departure of longtime ruler Bashar al-Assad late last year. Israel's army recently released a video of what it says are its forces on the ground in southern Syria. The IDF said it was targeting terrorist infrastructure linked to hostile activities near its border, raiding a weapons storage site and arresting several suspects. Now, at the same time, there are diplomatic efforts, including by US President Donald Trump, to push Syria to join the US-brokered Abraham Accords, which have normalised relations with several Arab states and Israel.
Cautious statements from Syria about improving relations with Israel. Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara revealed last week that indirect talks to halt Israeli attacks on Syrian territory are underway. Israeli media has reported its national security advisor saying the two countries are coordinating on joint security issues and managing political questions. This could open the door for Syria and Lebanon to join the so-called Abraham Accords, normalizing relations with Israel. On the streets of Tel Aviv, billboards advertise the Abraham Alliance. The image features regional leaders whose countries are not yet part of the Abraham Accords, including Syria and Lebanon. U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, said the coming weeks could see important announcements regarding new countries in the region joining the Abraham Accords, including some that few would have thought would join the agreement.
The previous regime used the symbols of resistance and opposition to Israel, but these slogans will not work. They have not helped the Syrian people, nor have they helped the Palestinian cause in any way. I believe that under the banner of the Abraham Accords or any other agreement, it doesn't matter what it's called, why doesn't Syria join the peace process with Israel, as Egypt, Jordan and the United Arab Emirates have done? Syria would benefit greatly from this, especially in these difficult circumstances.
The Syrian government did not object to Israel's recent use of Syrian airspace to thwart Iranian attacks, nor did it condemn the Israeli attack on Iran in any way. However, it strongly condemned the Iranian attack on a U.S. military base in Qatar. U.S. President Donald Trump urged al-Shara to join the Abraham Accords when they met in May. Media reports at the time said that Shara had expressed his willingness to do so even before meeting Trump. But one analyst says it's more complicated than it might look.
Other Arab countries cannot be compared to Syria in terms of the agreements they have signed. In Syria, there are occupied territories and security issues, and there is no solid ground for moving towards normalization or negotiations.
Syria could take more limited measures, such as security agreements, before coming to a comprehensive agreement. But it's unclear whether the Syrian government has enough authority and public support to take such a step.
Right, we're joined now by Nimrod Goren, the founder and president of Mitvim, the Israeli Institute for Regional Foreign Policies. Good to have you with us. Israel has been carrying out military operations in Syria, as we heard. How realistic is the inclusion of Syria in the Abraham Accords, considering issues like this one and the continued occupation of the Golan Heights?
There are opportunities for improved Israel-Arab relations, and I think Syria is definitely within this equation. But the road to full normalization, like what we saw under the banner of the Abraham Accord, seem a bit distant still. First, because Israel and Syria are in a state of war, where the countries have been engaging in territorial disputes since 1967. So it's not like the realities between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain, with which the Abraham Accords were signed, in which there were practically not a war before. So when we're talking about Israel-Syria relations, for years, we've been talking about peace negotiation, for a peace agreement to end the situation of war, to solve territorial disputes. Yes, there is a possibility for all kinds of interim agreements or arrangements, but to jumpstart all of that and then move directly to full normalization, as we have with countries in the Gulf, seems a bit too far for a first step.
Right. The Syrian government's silence, though, on Israeli operations against Iran, for example, and its condemnation of Iranian actions does suggest to some people a new strategic orientation. Could this mark at least the beginning of a long-term realignment of Syria away from Iran and closer to the West or Israel?
Definitely, and I think that's a much more realistic way to put it than the way that President Trump is marketing it, because we definitely see a change. Remember, when the transition in Syria happened a bit more than half a year ago, Israel took a very tough approach, very negative rhetoric on al-Bashar, even portraying him as like an evil, trying to not allow the lifting of sanctions, operating militarily within Syria. After the visit of Trump to the Gulf, where he met al-Bashar, where he spoke favorably about him, when he announced the lifting of the sanctions, I think the Israeli perception changed. That was the time when indirect and then direct talks between Israel and Syria have been launched. So I think people understand that the attitude of the regime in Syria, even vis-a-vis Iran, and you mentioned it and we saw it during the confrontation between Israel and Iran, Syria basically does not want Iran to have a strong presence in the region, strong capacity. Iran was in Syria before. al-Bashar does not want it to return. So I think there's a convergence of interest. There is a process ongoing. There is legitimization of dialogue channels, but we need to begin with ad hoc coordination, cooperation in a gradual manner to resolve the different issues, to build slowly a better relationship, and then have it geared toward a full-fledged peace treaty. But again, this requires skilled diplomacy, and it's not always done through this or that social media posts.
To what extent is US pressure, particularly from figures like President Donald Trump and Envoy Witkoff, shaping Syria's apparent openness to dialogue with Israel? And could this influence that they're shaping and taking from outside of their borders, could it backfire domestically for al-Bashar?
I think definitely the impact of external powers on the success of the Syria transition is key, because at the beginning, when the downfall of Assad happened, it wasn't clear what direction al-Bashar will take. But the moment in which Western countries and moderate countries in the Arab world decided to back this transition process, to give support to al-Bashar, to do it under some conditions. So it's not only the Americans, it's also the Europeans, it's also the Saudis who are bringing money into Syria. So in terms of the prospects of this transition in Syria to succeed, al-Bashar needs the support of the Americans, of other countries. And that comes with some tit for tat, with some condition, also relating to an approach towards Israel that does not see Israel as an enemy which he intends to fight soon. And early on in this transition, we saw these statements coming from Damascus that they do not look for a fight with Israel or others. Does that mean that there are no problems to be solved? Yes, there is. Your report just showed Israeli military operation on the ground in Syrian territory. If you want to change the nature of the relationship between the countries, those things should be stopped and reversed. So again, there is a way to go. The American role is crucial, but the direct dialogue channels between Israel and Syria to practically resolve the issues at stake, I think those will be the keys for success.
Nimrod Goren, founder and president of Mitvim, the Israeli Institute for Foreign Policies. We thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.